Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everybody, I'm with Mike Mutzel to talk about health and immune system and time to let Mike just vent. I am so excited to have you on the show. You know, we want to talk about fasting and cell autophagy and all that, but I feel like it's appropriate time to just dive into the message you've been trying to share and doing such a good job at on social media and your podcast and everything. So kind of first, let's introduce who you are, because I'm sure everyone knows who you are, because you've built yourself up to be this amazing resource for everybody in the entire world. So
I guess, yeah. I mean, I just share stuff, you know. So Debbie, you and I have known of each other for a while. When I was like, I think 13 or 14 was when I really started working out, and you were a trainer at the Bellevue. It used to be called the Bellevue Club. Yep. Now or Bellevue Athletic Club, right? Anyway, yep. So we've known each other for a very long time, and family, friends, and all that sort of stuff. So I'm like you, just always interested in health, and so it's just kind of one of those things because. When I was younger, you know, exposed to, you know, hanging out with kind of the wrong kids and all that sort of stuff, got my life off course, and it was health that brought it back at a very early age. So I realized, you know, early on that like, you got to prioritize your health because that's going to improve your life, the quality of your relationships and all that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, with this whole pandemic, I mean, I think it's cool that, you know, we're getting these recommendations from the CDC and the World Health Organization about washing our hands and wearing masks and doing all these things to, using air quotes, be healthy. But there's really been little to, if any, mention about other things like stress management, sleep, exercise, nutrition. So, you know, we're making everyone wear masks. And look, I get it. If that can slow down the spread and help save lives, I'm all for it. But, you know, the thing that the problem is, if you really look at, and what I've been following since March, you know, when we went on lockdown, because I have a research interest, a master's degree in nutrition, is looking at some of the characteristics of individuals that are hospitalized versus those that are in the ICU versus those that get infected and are not hospitalized in the ICU. And this is where the whole model of this disease affects everyone in a uniform fashion kind of falls apart. And if you look at the characteristics of individuals who have severe disease versus people who have either no symptoms or mild disease, that's where the disparity lies. And so, you know, and again, so I've been kind of poking fun at this on social media. We shut down gyms, but we kept McDonald's open. Mm-hmm. And if you look at, you know, the consumption of the types of foods that McDonald's and Wendy's and Arby's and all these essential businesses sell, it leads to all the different disease comorbidities that are linked with increased disease severity and more likely to end up in the ICU and to be hospitalized and mentalized and intubated and all that. So that's kind of where, you know, I've been critical of, you know, the idea that everyone wears masks, yet we don't mention anything about nutrition. We don't talk about stress management, sleep. Like, you know, I was just driving in Oregon the other day and there was all these road signs that were normally, you know, tell you about traffic and updates and all that. And right next to it was the next stop was advertising all the fast food restaurants and Arby's and Wendy's and Del Taco and McDonald's. And it was like the juxtaposition of these two different signs. It was like, wear a mask. And then, oh, by the way, here's McDonald's. So, you know, and now we know, and now that you are living in California, maybe you can speak more to this, but California just underwent another lockdown. And it's like, well, wait, if it didn't work the first time, how are we thinking it's going to work this time?
I know. I've been hibernating, as I just was telling you, in the mountains and just being in this happy place. I'd actually, you know, deleted Facebook on my iPad and iPhone. So because it was stressing me out. And so, you know, I used to reach out, and I don't know how you manage your stress with all that that you do, because to me, it makes me so angry. And then last night hearing that this week California was closing down and Washington's going to do the same thing, that it's like, oh my gosh, I always say, what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And it's like, why are we shutting down the fitness studios and the hair salons? And it just makes me so mad. And I mean, I love what you're doing, and it's great to share that, but how do we win? You know, how do we get people to listen and hear about this?
Hold on. This is news to me. Washington's going to shut down again?
Neil looked that up this morning.
Oh, are you kidding me? This
Yeah.
is so frustrating. Wow. I mean, here's the thing, Debbie, call me insensitive, but the deaths don't really matter. Oh, I know cases are increasing and that's naturally going to happen, but it's like, and I know there's a delay in deaths. I don't want to sound super insensitive, but it's like, if the deaths are not there and people are just getting sick, and we don't know what the long-term ramifications are of what happens in the post COVID-19 syndrome if you get sick, and then what does it do to your heart, your brain, and all this. I mean, we don't know the chronic effects of that, so I understand limiting the spread. But I'm working with some clients who have this, and that's kind of the thing. I have people that I'm coaching who have had the virus. Most of which live healthy lives. But prior to this, they were doing intermittent fasting, exercise, meditation, you name it. They got sick. They got sick, like the flu, and they self-quarantined for a few days away from their friends and family. Didn't need to go to the hospital. Didn't need to be intubated. And now they're living normal lives. They said, a few of them have had issues with like taste and smell and stuff like that. That was like a really noticeable symptom. A little bit of air hunger in one client. Another client just noticed when he started exercising again, he felt a little weaker. And that was pretty much it. And these are people ranging from 57 years old to 33. And so, look, I'm not saying that I want everyone to get this thing, but it's also like, well, I mean, look, if you're living a healthy life, the chances that that this is really going to be detrimental and crash the healthcare system. And so that's the thing. It's like you said, what's the definition of insanity? How more can we continue to crush the economy? Because the thing is, when you and I made a video on this, when everyone seemingly thinks in binary terms, it's black or white, it's good or bad, it's healthy or unhealthy, you're either vegan or you're a carnivore, right? That there's no in between. And what we need to realize here is when we focus only on the virus, we ignore things like suicides. We ignore things like the side effects of social isolation. There was just a report here in the British Journal of Medicine talking about some quotes from a psychiatry clinic where elderly subjects are so depressed and doing virtual consults because they're so scared now to see their grandchildren. One quote, and I'm going to share it and I'll share this, so maybe we can post this in the show notes or something like that. One woman said, I'm so depressed that I don't know if I'm ever going to see the ocean again, and I feel like I'm dying faster. Just all of these things. So, we're not considering the collateral damage and what is known. There's a great book, Anti-Fragile, and Nassim Taleb, I can't remember his full name, but he talks about iatrogenesis. I mean, it's a really interesting term that's often been utilized in the context of pharmaceuticals and medicines. When you go to the doctor, sometimes there's unintended harm, going to the doctor. For a good example of this, my mother got her hip replaced, and it turned out that hip replacement failed, so she had chromium and all these heavy metals leaking. So then they did the replacement of that. Not only did she have heavy metal burden from the faulty hip, but then they pulled on her perennial nerve, so then she has what's called drop foot, so she can't move her foot. So that is an unintended consequence of just what she thought was a benign surgery, getting your hip replaced. Like, she thought it would be like changing your tires. Like, surgeons do this thousands of times a year. It's probably no big deal, but it turned out to be a big deal. So anyway, we're not considering those unintended consequences for whatever reason when we're making these public health decisions to, say, shut down the economy. I mean, if you own a gym, you as a former gym owner, you sold your gym prior to this, right?
Yeah, I'm thankful every day. I closed it October 1st. And I feel for those people. Like, I reached out to my friend Aaron Carson, who's in Boulder and owns Rally Sport. Like, how are you surviving? How are you doing this? Because they have, a big club that they can't, I think they're trying to open now. I don't know if they're going to close again, but I mean, I feel for all these businesses, and that's what, going back to definition of insanity, it didn't work before. We're not stopping the spread by hiding into our own homes and not doing anything. And in San Diego, I'm in northern San Diego right now. We're, in the mountains, I feel like I'm just leading a normal life, but you go into town or go to the beach, everyone's out and the stores are all open and we can go anywhere and do anything as long as you wear a face mask. Well, I keep thinking, if you put everyone back home again, how unless they're taking care of themselves, getting them healthy, how is that not going to happen again? That once we go out, it's not going to spread again. So it's like, are you working on the best solution? Because we're going back doing the same thing again. How do you not think that the virus isn't going to spread once we're out in public again? And it's just so frustrating that we're just going backwards again. And obviously they didn't realize that this didn't work the first time. We need to actually improve our health while you're staying at home.
100%. I mean, and the other thing that I think is not being talked about is the amount of suicides as a result of the financial stress. You mentioned your friend in Boulder, Rally Sport. I've been to that gym. I think it's a great gym. I know it's frequented by the healthiest of the healthy in a utopian little, subculture in Boulder, Colorado. Right. So it's like closing Rally Sport. But anyway, the financial stress. I mean, think about that. If you're probably as a gym owner, getting people putting pauses on their memberships, you're not getting income. That in and of itself is super stressful. That affects your sleep. That affects your consumption of illicit drugs, alcohol, other things. So we're not considering that. So, and our children too. I mean, not to totally, deviate the conversation, but the fact that our children are probably not going to be going back to school, or school is going to be quasi-virtual. I mean, I know in our house, we really are vigilant about screen time, and screen time use has increased amongst all of us. And we're very conscious and very aware of this. I've read various books on this, from iGen, which is written by a psychologist at San Diego State University, actually talking about the deleterious effects of screen addiction, particularly amongst younger generations. And so we know that suicidal ideations and thoughts amongst adolescents is really high. Last time I checked, there was an article that was circulating showing that the number of deaths from suicides in California alone exceeded the number of deaths from COVID-19 during the same era. So it's kind of interesting where, but we're not talking about that, because if you have the guts or the courage to point that out, then people will accuse you of being an insensitive grandma killer and all that. So it's really what I'm seeing here. And David Perlmutter talks a lot about this, in his videos and things like that, that the media, the fear, and what it does is it changes the way that how we think, and it changes our belief system. So we're no longer using our prefrontal cortex to think rationally. It's more of our kind of reptilian brain, the limbic system, that's driving the show. So you're seeing these irrational responses, this binary thinking, these like emotional vomits of comments where people just spew their guts and accuse you of these things. So yeah, it's crazy to me, Debbie. I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I hope this is not that it's just kind of an election fodder and maybe some political things being infused, but if this is politically motivated, then it scares me that politicians or people would go this far to alter people's lives to push a political narrative. That to me is pretty scary. So I don't know the solution.
Well, I have to be honest, I haven't watched the news for 2 weeks. So
Nice.
I have no idea. I mean, I don't know if it's an ignorant thing to do or just to actually decrease my own stress and start my new journey, because I was just getting so worked up about everything and so frustrated that I'd be totally messing my own health up. So I'm, just disassociate myself from the world and just come here in my little mountains and feel like I'm in Tuscany. But I know I was going to mention it, when we go to the coast and go back into civilization, the beaches were busy here, but people are outside, they're healthy, and they're eating outside. Their coffee shops, we could go sit outside and take our computers and work. I mean, it felt like you're almost back to normal. So it's really frustrating to go, okay, do we really need to go back to closing all these? Because it was, I think, fine. That's not where the problem is. And I went to Costco the other day, and you see all these people that you're like showing your Instagram posts and you talk about in your videos that they're not working on their health. Like the guy, getting all the sodas and getting all the garbage. Like, how can we team up, like the leaders as yourself and Dr. Perlmutter and all these people, Dr. Mercola? I mean, how come you can't all join together and talk to some leaders in the government to make an impact? Like, we're not going to be able to say, oh yeah, work on your health, get rid of the crap, because the political nutrition, but it's just, how do you get that message out into the media about health?
Yeah, Debbie, I don't really know. I mean, it's super interesting though when you think about how quickly we've changed our behavior as a society, because now anywhere you go, and I've been traveling a lot, in the last the Northwest, and then as far as Salt Lake City in the last I've been to Montana, Idaho twice, Salt Lake and all that, and Oregon, and what you see is we've already adopted social distancing. Like people are like already totally like weird, scared of other people. And naturally this is like how we behave. I've only shaken one person's hand. Not that I'm not afraid of other people necessarily. But most people now, when you go up to see them, there's this awkward, do I hug you? Do I shake your hand? Or do I do the COVID elbow pump? And most people are kind of doing that. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is, whether it's the media or public health officials, we've really quickly changed our behavior. Okay, so why can't we, have this top-down message? It could be something as simple as, I would be totally cool with, hey, cut out your sugar, like no more than 10 grams of refined sugar per day. Get 10,000 steps in. This could be a simple message. Less than 10 grams of sugar, 10,000 steps. Like you could remember that, just like stay home, stay safe, like flatten the curve. That could be one of those things that people remember. That alone, I think, could really, in just a short period of time, really improve people's health and then cause them to maybe make better decisions. Maybe they could say to McDonald's, like, hey, you can only sell a small size soda. I don't know, something. You can't sell French fries. Like you can buy anything else but something. Like, it would just be cool if there was some inkling of acknowledgement that nutrition actually means something. And then it would let everyone know that, like, the intentions are truly altruistic and with the intent of improving. These recommendations have good intent behind them. Right now, it's hard to totally figure that out.
So I know you've talked a lot about, what we should be doing, working on our health, and who's prone to getting this bad side effects of COVID. Other people just feel like they're just getting the flu. So maybe to summarize what you found the last few months, insulin resistance and other things like that are top things. So, eating sugar, but obesity, insulin resistance. What are some other things that you've researched and found the trends and talking to your other peers in the world?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, just looking at the pure science. So, glycemic variability. So, for example, you and I, Debbie, as athletes, people we've been training for a long time, eat probably a low carb-ish style diet. Maybe we carb cycle based upon our activity. So our blood sugar levels is not having these massive swings, and that's called variability. So when you have extreme glycemic variability, so maybe you start the day off with some Cheerios and milk and maybe some Pop-Tarts and bread, things like that. You're going to have some massive blood sugar swings, and that, based upon the connectedness. And if we just hold that thought and talk about this idea, this paradigm that I've really been trying to educate people for many years. I wrote a book all about this called immunometabolism. So what we think about in medicine, in health and nutrition, is all these different elements are kind of in these, neatly fitted buckets. Your immune system is over here, and then you have your metabolism, and then your brain is over here. And, because that's how medicine is kind of parsed out or subspecialized. But we know that there's all this crosstalk. So now that we understand kind of how conventional medicine is framed, if we think about what's really going on, our immune system and our metabolism are like two sides of the same coin. And so when we have that glycemic variability that I was referring to, a lot of blood sugar ebbs and flows, that causes alterations over here on the immune system side. And again, this has been well characterized by many scientists since going back as early as, I think, 1998. This scientist over at Harvard kind of figured this out in primitive, in more, not evolved animals like flies. That in flies, their immune system is part of their adipose tissue. Like, they're the same organ. So how they store energy is really where their immune defense lies. And this scientist at Harvard says, well, this kind of makes sense, because in the state of starvation, what's going to harm you is like trauma or an infection. So if you have all this energy there that can be repartitioned to save your life in the face of a lethal, you get a predator gets you or something like that. So you have a lot of damage from, that or an infection. You want your energy buffers right there. And in humans, it's the same thing. So a lot of our immune system and immune system cells are congregated around fat tissue. When we get more overweight, there's the increase in fat cell accumulation is directly proportional to an increase in all types of immune cells within adipose tissue. So from T lymphocytes to B cells to macrophages, monocytes, every kind of quantifiable immune cell that you can think about and look at under a microscope, it's found in increased concentrations in fat tissue as people gain weight as early as 6 years old. So this is an early phenomenon that happens really kind of quickly, even in kind of childhood obesity. So that again kind of solidifies this model of this immunometabolism. So, you know, I did a video on this in March, and I was kind of like hypothesizing as just someone who's been studying this, and this idea that why people are getting disproportionately ill from this virus has to do with this underlying chronic inflammation. The more, and again, this is just a theory, and I'll share with you some of the data in a minute, and people that have kind of corroborated around this theory, that the more that our baseline level of inflammation is increased, the less tolerance we have for new insults. It's just going to, our glass is going to be overfilled. It's going to be the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. And so, and we're actually starting to see that being sussed out in the literature. And so, why would that be? Well, if we're chronically inflamed, Debbie, what tends to happen then is we're turning on the thermostat of our aging pathways and causing our immune system to age more rapidly than it would normally occur. And that is affecting our body's ability to then surmount a viral infection, a lethal infection. And so this is kind of one of the trends that's been David Sinclair and his group at Harvard had come out with this in April. Again, this immunosenescence model of why people become disproportionately affected by this virus. And so we're seeing this in the elderly and the people over 65, where the case fatality ratio, the infectious fatality ratio is much higher because people in that age group are dying more quickly at a higher rate compared to people that are younger. Part of that could be that their immune system age is increased. But what's interesting now is we know that if you have chronic diseases, if you have inflammation, even if you have autoimmunity, that the rate at which the age of your immune system may not be the same as your chronologic age. You know, I'm 37 years old, for example. The age of my immune system is actually 40. So it's kind of interesting because we can actually test this through epigenetics now. There's a lab actually in San Diego called MyDNAge that looks at the age of our immune system. And so we can actually test for this. And so anyway, I made this video as kind of a hypothetical kind of thing based upon all the different results that were coming out and being published. Like, for example, when individuals are first presented to the hospital, if they're positive for the SARS-CoV-2 virus, if their white blood cell count is lower, then their chances of being intubated and hospitalized and all that is much higher. And so, you know, a lower white blood cell count would be characteristic of some low-grade immunosenescence, accelerated aging of the immune system, and chronic inflammation. And then Sinclair's group has published that and many others. So I think that's what's going on. It's kind of interesting. And so again, the only way to reverse that is not staying home and wearing a mask. It's exercise, it's diet, it's meditation, it's circadian rhythm balance. It's all of these things that, you know, these alternative people have been talking about. But this is really where, if we want to change the way that people are not affecting the transmission, but changing how the virus impacts their biology, that's, I think, where we need to really focus. I know that's where we need to focus on. And yeah, it's not really being talked about, which is unfortunate. So it's crazy.
Well, I've heard that, and that's, your information is fascinating to really figure out who is getting sick and, in the hospital on their deathbed and who's not. And I was trying to follow that as well in the beginning, and I'll have to go back and watch that video, because I even know someone in Bellevue that's super fit. They travel all the time. She got sick and was feeling horrible for the, typical 14 days of COVID. And I don't know, I haven't followed where she is now, how she's feeling, but she was probably, late 40s and seemed healthy. So then you think, oh, you're not invincible, but maybe there's something else going on, if it's genetics. Or what I kept saying is, as FDN practitioners, we do lab testing. Like, all right, you might be healthy on the outside, as a lot of athletes are, but are you really fit on the inside, looking under the hood, getting lab tests like the GI map and figuring out, do you have hidden internal stressors that are causing you to be less healthy and having a lower immune system, less resiliency because of our chronic stress? And even if you eat healthy, you could still be prone to having dysfunctional gut and less immune system. So it's just been this, fascinating last 3-4 months trying to figure out any patterns that people see and learn more. But then also I was going to throw in that when I go to Escondido or Del Mar and we go running, all the people I see are totally healthy, and I'm just impressed with these older people going surfing and people out walking and running. Like, these aren't the people that need to be staying at home. They're outside exercising, they're eating pretty much looks healthy, and they're socializing and interacting with others. They're on the sand with their bare feet walking on the beach. They're by the ocean, getting those negative ions and just de-stressing. So it's like, oh, these people, how can we not be able to keep doing this? But anyways, it's just great that you've been correlating all this information together and creating your own theory, because you do research so much and you're so knowledgeable.
Yeah. It's, I just try to interpret, this is not like I'm the genius here. These are all like, studies that have been, these are retroactive studies. And so they're looking at, hey, okay, here's all the inputs that we have from people that came to the hospital and, tracking different biomarkers and white blood cell count, lymphocyte count, neutrophil ratios. You can look at things like triglycerides, glucose, all of these things. And so that's statistically showing that there's a higher propensity for individuals who have underlying metabolic disease. And to kind of piggyback on what you were talking about there with that friend or someone that you knew in the Bellevue area that traveled and was, ostensibly healthy, but we don't really know. That's the thing. So a lot of people think that if they don't have a diagnosed disease, that they are healthy. But if you, the thing is, you and I, Debbie, have both been to conventional doctors, right? We know that as well-intended as many conventional doctors are, they miss a lot of stuff because they don't have a lot of tools. So for example, if I were to say, take 3 months off exercise and eating healthy, my triglycerides will go up, my glucose will go up. A doctor might just say, well, look, let's spend a few months. You might want to start exercising again, or they might recommend I go on a phenofibrate to affect my triglycerides. They might give me a statin, but they may not diagnose me with a disease. So I could have no diagnosed comorbidities, but that doesn't mean that I'm healthy. And so I think this is where the media tends to run with these stories. Otherwise healthy 30-year-old, otherwise healthy 43-year-old gets ravaged by the virus. And if you look at these people and their diet and stuff like that, they don't really live a life that is considered by, functional or integrative medical trained or nutritionally trained people that would deem as being healthy. So I think, again, here's where kind of the message is, and the failure of the messages is kind of being exposed, is that we think that if you don't have a diagnosed disease, well, that must mean that you're healthy. And we know that's absolutely not true. As I mentioned earlier, in kids as old as 6 years old, that's when you start to see changes physiologically with childhood obesity and type 2 diabetes, the infiltration of, immune cells in and around fat tissue. Well, if you look at that child's blood work, they may look healthy, but if you were to biopsy their fat tissue, it would start to very much so look unhealthy. And if you were to do a carotid IMT, you could start to see early atherosclerosis at age, I think it's either 4 or 6. So these things happen early. They don't manifest until someone's really in their 50s or 40s, or even later in some cases. So that's, I think, our true assessment of and diagnosis of health is, unfortunately, it's kind of subjective, unless, like you said, you do these different tests, or we look at DNA testing, or we look at blood work, or we really kind of do something a little bit more with more precision. Then we're not truly going to know that. So I think that's what's good and that's bad. But one thing that's kind of interesting too, to kind of add a little bit more credence to this model, that if people have chronic inflammation, if people have metabolic dysfunction, then it's going to predispose them to increased disease severity. There was a new paper that just came out, I think it was on Sunday or Monday, and one of the two, as we record this. So it's either, the 12th or 13th of July, that showed that T regulatory cells infused to individuals who are sick improve their outcomes. And I think this, again, solidifies some more of this immunosenescence chronic inflammation model. So Debbie, you and I are healthy right now. We exercise. We've been doing this a long time. If we were to take that 3-month hiatus, go to McDonald's, do all this, if we increase our levels of chronic inflammation, and we gain more visceral adipose tissue, so the fat around the middle or fat in general, what's going to happen is our levels of leptin are going to increase. A lot of people are familiar with this hormone. It's involved in energy sensing, appetite, satiety, but leptin is also intimately involved within the immune system. It's really this kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type hormone. Leptin, what it does within the immune system is it dramatically decreases the amount of these protective cells called these T regulatory cells. I know it's not really popular to talk about police right now, but these T regulatory cells are like the policemen of our immune system. So when there's cops and robbers and bad guys, for example, maybe there's antibodies being created against your thyroid gland, which is the case of Graves or Hashimoto's, for example, or there's your joints are being attacked, which is common in MS or RA, rheumatoid arthritis. So the T regulatory cells, these so-called policemen, these security guards within our immune system, will tell your immune system, hey, don't make antibodies against that tissue like the thyroid gland. That's our self tissue. We want to keep that. Okay, that's what the T regulatory cells do. So what happens is when we have high leptin, the T regulatory cells aren't around. So then we can create autoimmunity. So what's really interesting is this clinical study, and this is why we see people with obesity have higher prevalence of autoimmune diseases. People with diabetes have higher prevalences of not only autoimmune diseases, but also cancers, because cancers, part of how the cancers grow is they evade the immune system, for which the T regulatory cells would normally be healthy. So this is how a metabolic derangement can cause immune issues. And immune issues, I'm talking about cancer and also autoimmunity. Anyway, going back to the study showing that these individuals used, I don't know how they got the T regulatory cells, whether they're from stem cells or whatnot. But anyway, they infused T regulatory cells into the blood system of individuals who had increased disease severity, who were on a ventilator in the ICU. This was just a case report of like 3 or 4 people. All of those people did dramatically better. Like, again, this was like a last ditch effort by this research team who had really, really sick patients. Are like, okay, well, we think this might work. And it really worked. And so what's interesting is we can naturally improve the balance and increase these T regulatory cells by losing weight, by doing intermittent fasting. Even studies show that things like polyphenols and fiber in the diet and all these different things and omega-3 fats, for example, can improve levels of these protective cells. And so what these cells might do, and here's what's really interesting, because we know that this virus harms humans, but it's really our own immune system that ultimately kills us. That's the thing. So this virus is like a lot of collateral damage. And the analogy that I've used is like, okay, let's say in your home, there was a bunch of mosquitoes. You had a bunch of mosquitoes in your home. So instead of like hitting them one by one with a fly swatter and you took like an AK-47 or a shotgun and just shot up your home, right? You might kill the mosquitoes, but your home would be destroyed. And so that's kind of what's going on within the immune system of people that have COVID-19 is like, it's not really the virus that's killing people. It's their own immune system that's overreaching because there's just this cytokine storm and these different issues. So without the T regulatory cells there to pull back the immune system and say, hey, okay, interleukin-6, all right, we've had enough of you. Chill it out before you just destroy the lung tissue and the liver and the kidneys, right? TNF-alpha, same thing. So the T regulatory cells can help tame that response. And again, this is what we're seeing in the pathophysiology reports and the autopsies is the cytokine storm that causes multi-organ failure. So if you don't have these protective cells to kind of bring down and regulate that, then the immune system just goes into overdrive. And anyway, this is where lifestyle comes in, because these are malleable. Even just something like a few mindful deep breaths has been shown to affect these T regulatory cells. Vagal nerve stimulation, cold immersions, all of these things. And to me, I think that's empowering. I think it's a lot more empowering than say just stay home, stay safe, wear a mask, all that. So I think it's cool that we know that we can volitionally change our immune system response, and it's exciting to me.
I just wish the media would get this out, because it's such important information, life-saving information that the world needs to hear. But it seems like we're just within our own little community, we're getting this message out. But, it's just getting someone on to get on the local media and let that kind of go. But it just seems like we've found all this great information. All right, here's how to pass it on, because I don't see this virus really disappearing suddenly, and we're just back to where we were last year. So, what can you do but just take responsibility? As I keep saying, this is a time when we stay home, stay healthy. Really should be stay home, take ownership of your health, or, not stay home, but just take ownership of your health and be responsible. And it's a choice. All these things that you're giving are free. Most of them are all free. Breathing, intermittent fasting, how we can get everyone to, listen and pay forward and tell their friends and family, here's some things you can do now that cost nothing, and it's your choice to do it. Your choice to take ownership of your own health and build that immune system up, build your own resiliency, instead of just being scared to go out anywhere. Like I was at Costco on the weekend, and it's the first time I've really been yelled at by someone at the store. That this lady was sitting on this sofa that I was trying to take a picture, and there's signs all over the furniture, do not sit, the Costco stuff for sale. And there's an older lady, and I forgot, to me, if you're wearing a mask, the 6-foot rule doesn't really matter. 6-foot rule or wear a mask, but they have, both rules everywhere. So this lady was on the phone sitting there. I'm trying to get around her, take a picture of the price of the sign to save it, because we're looking at furniture. And she's like, get away from me. Why having this 6-foot rule? I don't want to get COVID in Costco. And I started kind of getting an argument. Neil had to come over, and it's like, lady, you're not supposed to sit there anyways. But the rest of the day, I was like, that's scary to me. People are so uneducated and so confused how we get COVID and how we react to it, but that we're scared going out in public that, okay, I'm just like 3 feet from you and I'm going to give you COVID, and we're both wearing face masks. It's like, this is reality though. And she's older, but I think it's just so many people are scared, and so they're afraid to do anything. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sad world.
I mean, it's kind of, the idea, if you think about it, like, so this is just one example. My wife, Deanna, who's healthy and all that, she got super sick in January, right? I didn't get sick. We live in the same house. We share the same kitchen, share the same bathroom, all of that stuff, share the same bed. So it's like, just because even if someone does have it, doesn't mean that if you're near that person, you're going to get it all of a sudden. I mean, this idea that there's this infectious dose, like you need a certain amount of something. And this is why healthcare workers, by the way, tend to get really sick, because they're, when they're exposed to this, the level of viral particulate, the infectious dose is much higher. And so that's the thing, I think. And when people, just you being there, if you're breathing shallow breaths, like you're not exercising, you're not panting, you're not sneezing, the fact that the amount of viral particles, even if you're an asymptomatic carrier, I mean, to think that you're just all of a sudden going to get this lethal infection from that one little small event by brushing by someone, I think it seems unlikely. And not only that, there's been some studies talking about this where there's never been a documented case of transmission in the outdoors prior to the post George Floyd aftermath. Now, okay, so those protests, you had people yelling at each other's faces, getting in fights, yelling at police and stuff. And I understand, why the backstory of why they're doing all that. But talking about specifically viral transmission, prior to that point, there has never been, and I've been searching and searching and searching, never been one documented case of an outdoor transmission. Through that. So I can envision you're in Costco, someone sneezes on you, someone's breathing really hard, someone's yelling in your face. That might be enough. But, if you're in passing where you're near a couch and you're both not heavily breathing, to think that it's, there's going to be all of this particulate, it's crazy to me. But I mean, that's the thing, like, when everything's a hammer, when all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail. So again, the media has focused so much on social distancing and exhalation of whatever, but there's no mention of anything else like boosting your immune system or getting outdoors or exercise or sleep or anything like that. So that's what people are focused on, and they're super scared. So I worry about, like, for that lady, like, what is her life going to be like? Because these memories of social distancing and that people are scary and people have these bugs that could like kill her. I mean, it seems like that's not going to be let go anytime soon. I know, especially for a lot of kids, they're scared of people. Like we have some family friends and kids and stuff, and they're like scared of my daughter. Like, oh my gosh, well, does she have the virus? Like, I don't want to, like, I got to wash my hands. And these are things that when you learn early in life, they may be harder to unlearn. So I really worry about that.
Well, I know in March when all this started, I was passionate, like, let's explain how the immune system works. So I put together over a couple months this like 100-page ebook on Immune System 101. I'm just waiting someone to format it now, but it's just talking about the basics, how we have our own troops and weapons. And like you're talking earlier, all these weapons, I kept thinking of football, you got to get them trained for the Super Bowl game when they're ready to come out and have to fight. And you should be in training, waiting for that game day. And then, getting everything ready with your lifestyle habits and your nutrition, everything you've talked about. But I think a lot of people don't understand there's innate and adaptive immune system, how you're born with this and how we strengthen them and we can fight things off a little better. But it's just a confusing subject for most people to go into science or how your body works. So it's, I think, easier for the news to say, stay home safe, and not explain immune system, immunity, what is resiliency, and the base of it. So I was trying to put it together and just do basic Wikipedia type of definitions. Nice. This is, your T cells, what is it? And just go through and just list the basic definitions, what they are, and create different analogies of how they work. And I just think if we could get that type of information out there, I think it'd be helpful. But how do you feel that people should, do lab testing, or what they should eat, specific superfoods? What are you doing to improve your own immune system?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So exercise daily. So exercise is one of the best immune system enhancers out there.
Like outside, strength training, cardio, all of that.
Yeah, great question. A mix of both. So I used to be really big into cardio. I used to do endurance training and cycling and competing in that and really like that. But now it's more hiking, more walking with the dog. I think, again, just low hanging fruit for a lot of people. I mean, if you can get 10 to 15,000 steps and break it out throughout the day, so I have a treadmill right behind me. So I'll just do like a quick, it's permanently on the incline. So I'll have it at like 7% and I'll walk at like 4.5 to 5 to 6 miles an hour, just really quickly for 90 seconds. And by the end of that, I can barely breathe and all that. So I know I created some oxygen debt. So just like 3 or 4 of those throughout the day. And then I'm always moving around, and then we'll do like a big bike ride, a big hike, a big something. And then I do weight training. I try to hit every major muscle group at least 1 day per week. So that's parsed out over 4 different workouts. So, if you look at the data on exercise and just movement, and this can be gardening, anything to just stay moving. And so part of, I think, why exercise is helpful is you're moving your lymphatic system. So when we're just sitting around, we're on our computers, we're watching TV, we're driving our cars, whatever, not only is your blood stagnant, but your lymphatic system is stagnant. And so you're not recycling, recirculating, you're not moving all of the immune tissue. So I think that's a big part of it. And that can drive levels of inflammation. So the idea is if we can just reduce that background noise. So if there is, whether it's this superbug now or another superbug down the road, that we can appropriately mount a sufficient and robust immune system response. And this is actually how other animals like bats tolerate coronaviruses, is when they get infected by them, they have a super, a robust initial response, and then they bring it down. So they have this strong interferon response. And so we need this powerful, innate immune system response, what you were referring to, and then we need to let it calm down. But that's not what our immune systems are doing in the people that have these chronic diseases. Is there's not much of an early response, and it's this really delayed response, and it's like overshooting and shooting for the moon, and then that causes the damage. So I think if we can just reduce this background inflammation through exercise, through circadian rhythm optimization. A lot of people have sleep hygiene issues where sometimes they go to bed at 10, sometimes they go to bed at 2 in the morning. Your immune system, part of what sleep does is repairing your body by way of the immune system. So your immune system is super active when you're sleeping. Sleep is very important. So circadian rhythm balance. So cutting out the lights at night. It's harder now with the long days, especially here in the Northwest. It doesn't get dark till like 9:45, 10 o'clock at night, which is fine. But, it just means that we really need to be vigilant about our circadian rhythms, turn off the lights and then get off the devices and all that sort of stuff. Try to get up with the sun. Also, when you eat. So time restricted feeding, I think it's a subset of intermittent fasting, which bakes in this element of circadian biology. So I am a little bit more biased towards that. So I think, if people are trying to compress their feeding window, probably a really good thing to do. Many studies looking at Ramadan fasters have shown that just by Ramadan fasting, not even changing what you're eating or the quantities, but just changing when you eat the food, it decreases that background inflammation. So I think that's really helpful. So people can just do something simple. If you like to eat in the morning and don't like to eat a big dinner, then you can do something like from 10 to 4. Like that's your feeding window, 10 to 4. Really achievable for a lot of people if you don't have kids. If you have kids and you do family dinners, okay, fine. Make it noon to 6 or, 2 to 8, whatever. Just do something and have some sort of, bookending of when you're feeding. And that can be super helpful. Again, not only for the blood sugar issues that we talked about that are independently correlated with immune issues, but they can have direct immune effects. And many studies have shown this. So yeah, exercise, time-assisted feeding, being more vigilant about your sleep-wake cycles, circadian biology. You can look at supplements and all this. Supplements can be helpful. I think fermented foods play a big role in how your gut immune system is functioning. There are strain-specific probiotics that can affect natural killer cell and phagocytic capacity. One that comes to mind is Bifidobacterium lactis, HNO19. It has some really good research on prevalence of respiratory tract infections and natural killer cells and things like that. Obviously, some of the basics, vitamin D, vitamin K, vitamin A, some of the fat-soluble vitamins, particularly have a lot of effects within the immune system. So I think that's, again, low-hanging fruit, super affordable. You don't need a lot of lab testing to look at that. And then thermal stress on both sides. So extreme heat, extreme cold can be very helpful. We know just going in the sauna, several studies have quantified the changes in the immune system, different phagocytic cells, lymphocytes, and neutrophils are all increased after just going in the sauna for 15 minutes. So that can be helpful. And we know that when we do the opposite, when we go in the ocean, when we go in a cold river right now, all the rivers are flowing, which is great. That affects the brown adipose tissue. That also affects our immune system. So I think these are, again, all things that are fun you can do with people outdoors. I think it's a great thing. So I frequently do that with friends. Like, hey, let's go jump in the lake. Hey, let's go out in the boat. Hey, let's go jump in the river. Let's take a sauna together. These are things that you can still do and be social, but you're doing it outdoors and it's having a favorable effect on your immune system.
So great tips, and you yourself and your family do more intermittent fasting, or you think the 6-hour time restricted feeding, is that kind of what you found works best for you, or best research versus 8-hour window, or is there any differences you found?
Yeah, Debbie, that's a great question. It's really personal. It depends on someone's goals. We actually, this time of year, because we're more active, I'm often doing yard work or some construction on the house. So we're moving around in addition to like our recreational exercise. So our windows open when the days are longer. So this is the thing. I think a lot of people want this exercise or an intermittent fasting prescription. Like it has to be this, but
Exactly.
I think to bake in some flexibility and some seasonality to it. During the winter, it's actually a lot more compressed than it is now because we're more active. And so, yeah, I think it really depends. It's got to be personalized based upon, I think, the season. I think your health issues. Are you morbidly obese? Are you overweight? Are you you have 5 pounds you want to lose? There's a lot there. How long have you been healthy or unhealthy? So if you've been overweight your entire life and you're brand new to this, you might need to be more strict than someone who's been exercising for a few years and kind of just wants to dial things in. So, I hate to give people ambiguous, do it yourself course, but you kind of have to do that.
No, I agree. I always think N equals one, and we're all bio individuals and different things going on in our lives, different activity levels, and the time of year and season and whatnot. So essential to look at when you're looking at personalizing a nutrition and lifestyle program. But I know I always admire you and Deanna, how you mix up the way you eat. Like you said, it's not black or white, one or the other, is that it's, keto or carnivore or paleo, and how everyone's always like one or the other. And I'm just a big fan of, like going by the season, going by what your body feels like, looking at your activity levels. And like you said, you're more active in the summertime, you're more outside, and I don't like labeling how I eat and just saying, yeah, we're the low carb athlete, but I don't like to say keto or carnivore. It's just like a mixture. And like I've been going to the farmer's market and I bought these amazing microgreens and fresh celery and lettuces and avocados and all this stuff. So like, why don't we, eat food to balance our blood sugar, get our body to be fat burning machines and fat adapted. But, do you find yourself personally just kind of going by what you feel like? I know your wife post stuff on that too. It's like what time of the year it is. You're not just strict carnivore, strict keto, or whatever you want to call it.
That's what we do more, more so now. Now being this time of year, we have, I don't know, like 15 blueberry plants out there. So tons of blueberries are coming in. We have grapes. I'm looking at an apple tree right here, hardy kiwi, and our raspberries. We have like so many raspberries. So that to me is nature saying, hey, look, this is the time of year that you should probably be having, like, these foods are there. Like, I know I planted them and I know they're not exactly wild. They've been cultivated a little bit and everything like that. But these are when fruits are in season. So I really feel that and we know in hibernating animals that the microbiome changes with the seasons. For example, in bears, their microbiome changes and their metabolism kind of changes. So I think that's the ultimate, like, kind of the North Star that people should kind of aim for. But look, if your blood sugar is in huge flux, if you've been eating McDonald's and Wendy's for years, and then, then yeah, maybe you shouldn't be chowing down on a bunch of raspberries, especially if you're not physically active. So yeah, it's trying to figure that out. But we definitely, this time of year when there's a lot more choices and options that nature's providing us, our margin for error is improved. Like we have a lot more of those things, but we're also, just to underscore, we're much more physically active this time of year too. Mm-hmm. So now in the winter, we're eating a lot of berries now and stuff like that. We're not having berry smoothies in January, right? Yeah. We're having more broths and meats and things like that. So yeah, so you're naturally kind of swinging it. And again, I think this is what people should strive for. It just makes sense. The only diet that's really stood the test of time is a diet that your environment allows you to eat and supports you. So if you can try to, if you can try to eat whatever is grown locally within a 100-mile radius of you year round, you're probably naturally going to be carnivore some of the year, naturally going to be having like a microbiome diverse diet some of the year, naturally going to be fasting more times than some of the year. I think where we've divorced ourselves from that and we're having even the healthy food in the winter that's like imported from Chile or who knows where, I don't think that's really healthy. And I think that's where we are at odds with nature. And I think that's where, although the science hasn't caught up, I have a sneaky suspicion that that's part of why people are out of shape and having metabolic issues.
Yeah. So I know we're running out of time, but I think it's just great to let you have a platform to speak. And I know a lot of your followers have probably many questions and everyone has different opinions. So I'm grateful for you for speaking out and sticking with what you believe in your frustrations. I know when you're an influencer as big as you are, you have to get the good and the bad. And I know other people like Danny Vega were saying how he lost all his followers. And it's just, the stress of being in social media kind of influencers, you have to put up with a lot. So I'm glad you kind of just speak your piece and keep educating people on the facts and the science.
Thank you, Debbie. This was awesome. It was good to catch up with you. I'm glad that you're happy in California, and next time I'm down there, I'll reach out. Maybe we'll go for a bike ride or a swim or something like that.
Well, we will hopefully have a new house soon that's great for cycling in the mountains. And there's tons of hiking trails all around us. So look forward to making it a little retreat for everyone to come down and visit.
That's cool. In Temecula, or where's your house?
We're going to look, west of Escondido, kind of inland from, Rancho Santa Fe inland, but it's near the Elephant Forest and Lake Hodges and near all the mountains in Kit Carson Park in Escondido, where a lot of rides are. So we're excited. Live a happy, healthy quality of life. We're saying QOL, quality of life.
So you're in San Diego County.
Yes, North San Diego.
Okay, exactly.
San Diego County.
So the beach that you go to, is that Oceanside?
I like Escondido,
Okay,
Del Mar, La Jolla, so we kind of mix it up. But they have a great farmers market Sundays, so we kind of Leucadia down there. But
that's so
we're
cool.
inland, right where we're staying in our Airbnbs, inland from Oceanside, Carlsbad.
Okay, so that north area, I love that part. I love Del Mar too. That hike. Whenever I'm down there, I do that hike. I know it's super easy and it's like 45 minutes or whatever, but it's just great because you can jump in the ocean and then do a little hike. And we often see rattlesnakes out there and stuff like that. But
I know it's the best of both worlds. I've come here my whole life and always just went to the beach towns, and I really had no clue until 2 weeks ago that there's all these mountains just 30 minutes inland or 20 minutes. Cool. It's crazy. So anyways, let's tell people where to find you if they you've got
Debbie, thanks for that. So Instagram is metabolic_Mike, and then I'm pretty active on YouTube and Facebook as well. It's High Intensity Health. So if you type in Mike Mutzel, you'll be able to find it. But just grateful that everyone listened to this and hopefully you enjoyed it. And Debbie, I need to send you some things for the show notes as well.
Yeah, we'll put everything in the show notes. And also I know we just had KetoCon online and you did your cell autophagy clinic. I think people can go down by the KetoCon online summit, and you probably are speaking other online summits this year since they're all online.
It's crazy, man. Yeah. So, conferences. I mean, that's a great source of social connection for people. It's all gone. I mean, races, right? Like a lot of your listeners are doing events and all the events are canceled. I mean, it's crazy.
I know, sad. So I'll go back to my hibernation because I'll just get worked up again.
I know,
just got in a calm place and get my body healthier. But yeah, that's a big stress. So thanks. Keep doing what you're doing, and everyone can follow you. And you comment somehow to almost everyone. I don't know how you do it, but you are amazing. So keep it up. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.